What you're about to hear is the verbatim courtroom testimony from the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial, as reported by Inner City Press. What happened next was unexpected. The courtroom had seen surprises, but this was different. The room fell silent as a figure stepped forward. Wendy Williams. Yes, that Wendy Williams. The woman they tried to erase. The voice behind decades of whispers now amplified under oath. Known for her sharp tongue and headline-making takes, Wendy wasn't here to stir drama. She was here because the system that labeled her a problem was now on trial. She sat before the jury, no purple chair, no applause, just truth. Calm, poised, she adjusted the mic and spoke. I wasn't messy. I was early. Wendy began her testimony not with accusations, but with memories. Back in the early 2000s, you couldn't say Diddy's name without feeling the walls close in, she said. She recounted nights when after her broadcasts, calls would flood into the station. Advertisers dropped. Executives whispered, "You're poking the wrong bear." She brought receipts, stacks of transcripts, emails, faxes, station managers who warned her, legal threats masked as cease and desists. He was protected, she said, by more than fame, by money, fear, and silence. The courtroom leaned in as Wendy described being chased out of her radio station by members of the girl group Total after calling them broke on air. You think that was spontaneous? That was a message. She described a pattern. Every time she brought up Diddy's parties, artist contracts, or behavior, something vanished. A sponsor, a segment, a syndication deal. He didn't need to respond publicly. He had people for that. Wendy's voice grew firmer. She turned the conversation toward Jay-Z. You can't talk about Diddy without talking about the ecosystem that protected him. She referenced Foxy Brown. She was 15. Jay-Z was 27. You think that was mentorship? That was grooming. She opened a folder. Lyrics, album credits, receipts. Why was a grown man writing hypersexual lyrics for a teenager? Why was she being picked up from school by a man with a Maybach? A hush fell as she mentioned a lost tape. There was a rumor, Jay-Z, Foxy, Jamie Foxx. That tape vanished after a break-in at Foxy's place. It wasn't just gossip. The prosecution pressed. Did she have evidence? Wendy nodded. She listed industry insiders who backed out of her show after she mentioned Jay-Z. Emails from PR firms blacklisting her. They said I was too toxic. I say I was too truthful. She spoke about the infamous freak-off parties, the term now central to the federal indictment. Wendy described guests signing NDAs, phones confiscated, candle escorts, and assigned rooms. This wasn't a party. This was a ritual. She recalled an interview with Superhead, who described being invited by Diddy and asked to engage in acts she never consented to. Wendy played that interview over and over on air, because the truth was too heavy to ignore. Then came Cassie Ventura. Wendy's voice softened. I said it back then. She looked scared, not in love, controlled. Wendy recalled an interview clip where Cassie flinched when Diddy raised his voice. People said nerves. I said trauma. She brought timelines, Cassie's lawsuit, her show archives. They lined up. Wendy claimed Diddy had access to Cassie's phone, showed up unannounced, and isolated her. That wasn't a relationship. That was surveillance. Wendy described how after she mentioned it on air, her sponsors vanished, one by one. She cited a specific 2018 incident. Cassie ended the relationship after a break-in. Not the first time, just the last straw. Her voice tightened. When a mogul wants control, they don't need permission. They move the world around you. She referenced Oprah, Tyler Perry. This goes deeper. This isn't just Diddy. There are people in this room whose names you won't say, but whose hands are dirty. She testified about an email chain accidentally forwarded to her. The subject line, Managing Optics, Wendy, Puff, Tyler. That was all it said. That was all she needed. She revealed she once confided in Oprah about past abuse. Oprah promised privacy. Weeks later, her abuser was on Oprah's show. Wendy was blacklisted. That wasn't support. That was betrayal. She talked about NDAs, showed the court one dated 2007. Violation may result in financial penalty and public retaliation. She read it aloud. Public retaliation. That's how deep it went. Then she dropped a hotel email. Suite prepared with discretion measures, candlelight, extra linens. Date, 2015. Cassie was still with Diddy. That wasn't celebration. That was cover-up. Wendy ended with one message. You thought I was gossip, but I was documentation. Now it's not rumors. It's evidence. She turned to the jury. You see Diddy? I see a tower of silence built on NDAs, threats, and power plays. Every time someone spoke, that tower crushed them. Her final words echoed, I was called bitter. I was called crazy. But I was right. And I'd rather be right in exile than silent in success. She stood. No applause. Just stunned silence. What began as a music industry trial had turned into a seismic reckoning. One woman, one microphone, and 20 years of truth. And just like that, Wendy Williams walked out. But her words stayed, thundering louder than ever. Even as Wendy left the courtroom, the echoes of her words gripped the public. But behind those revelations was a deeper question. Who let this happen? Who enabled the silence? Wendy returned to the witness stand the next day, her energy steady but her focus sharper. You think Diddy acted alone? Let me show you how the system works. She spoke of executives, of middlemen, of crisis managers and brand consultants, of publicists paid to rewrite history, and security teams trained not to ask questions. There was a list in this industry, not a written one, but real. A list of people you don't speak against. Diddy was on that list, so were others. She revealed she was once offered a deal, a primetime TV contract, full syndication, national exposure. The condition? Stop mentioning certain names. They wanted me to play nice, I said no, and I paid. She described how she was pulled from press junkets, disinvited from premieres. Even longtime producers suddenly stopped taking her calls. I didn't disappear, I was disappeared. Wendy then turned to the heart of it all, the fear. You don't need someone to say, don't talk. You just need to see what happens when someone does. She described young artists who tried to leave contracts and found their music scrubbed from platforms. Others who disappeared entirely. One, she claimed, had his demos destroyed. He told me he was scared. Then he was gone. No one has heard from him since. And the most chilling? She named an incident where an industry executive called her directly and said, if you keep this up, Wendy, you won't just lose your show. You'll lose your safety. She looked straight at the jury. I'm still here. But not everyone was that lucky. Wendy took a sip of water, then leaned back into the microphone. Her tone lowered, more solemn now, as she said, let me tell you about the ones who didn't make it. The courtroom stilled. No one typed, no one whispered. All eyes were on her. She spoke of a singer, young, talented, signed at 17. One day, he questioned the terms of his contract. 2 weeks later, every trace of his music was gone. His social media wiped. His name scrubbed from streaming platforms. He called me once, Wendy recalled, crying. He said, I think I signed my voice away. I never heard from him again. Another artist, a backup dancer turned vocalist, disappeared after rejecting what Wendy called an invitation-only weekend hosted by a major mogul. She told me no one would ever hear from her again if she didn't comply, and she was right. Wendy then opened a file. Pages of names, dates, crossed out bookings, canceled shows, silenced artists. Some vanished, some overdosed, some were later reported dead by suicide. People think this industry runs on talent. It doesn't. It runs on compliance. And if you don't comply, you don't get to speak. Sometimes you don't get to live. The jury looked shaken. Wendy pressed on. She described her own lowest point, 2006. After being dropped by 2 networks in the same month, she began receiving anonymous packages. One contained a broken microphone, another a dead rose with a note, "Fall back or fall apart." She told the court that she began fearing for her life, changed her number, stopped traveling alone. I had to learn to smile while looking over my shoulder. That was the cost of telling the truth. She paused and then said something no one expected. You know what hurt the most? It wasn't the threats. It wasn't the blacklisting. It was that no one believed me. Not even my peers. Not even the people I tried to warn. She stared out across the room. The industry gaslit me for years, made me question my sanity, my worth, my memories. But now the walls are cracking. Would you like me to continue with part 4? It will cover Wendy's call to action, her message to future artists, and her final confrontation with the power structures still intact. Wendy took a breath, slow and deliberate. This, she said, was not just a trial, it was a reckoning. I'm not here to destroy careers, I'm here to free the truth. She turned toward the gallery, toward the cameras, toward the generation watching outside those walls. To the young artists out there, the dreamers, the ones writing songs in their bedrooms, the ones who still think this industry is made of glitter and Grammys, I need you to listen, because I wish someone had said this to me. She gripped the edges of the witness box. Fame isn't freedom. Success isn't safety. If you think the cost of your voice is a few clicks or a record deal, think again. Because the second you sign that paper, they start watching. Not to protect you, to control you. She said she had seen too many young stars go from hopeful to hollow, and each time she tried to warn them, she was branded bitter, washed up, angry. They called me crazy for telling the truth, but crazy just means inconvenient in this town. The prosecutor asked if she had any regrets. Wendy nodded. I regret that it took this long for the world to believe me, but I don't regret talking. I never will. She pulled out one final envelope. Inside, a handwritten list of names, artists, assistants, stylists, junior producers. All of them, Wendy claimed, had stories, some silenced by fear, others silenced by force. If I fall after this, she said, so be it. But I'll fall on the truth, not the lie they built their empires on. She turned, one last time, to the defense table. You thought power could protect you forever, but even towers crack from the inside, and I was the crack you never saw coming. She paused. Then she smiled, not bitter, not triumphant, just free. The judge dismissed the court for the day, but no one moved, not immediately. It was as if the room needed time to breathe again, to absorb what it had just heard. Outside, the courthouse was already surrounded by cameras and protesters. Some held signs, others held silence. Wendy exited without a word, but the headlines wrote themselves. Back inside, attorneys whispered, reporters scrambled, and somewhere in the back, one young artist sat frozen, pale, thinking, because Wendy's words weren't just testimony, they were a mirror. In the days that followed, new subpoenas were issued. Other artists began calling their lawyers. Anonymous tips flooded the press. More names surfaced, some long rumored, others never suspected. The music industry was no longer whispering, it was bracing. And Wendy? She returned home, quietly. No show, no interviews, just a statement posted online. To everyone who thought I was lying, you can't bury the truth forever. It grows, it cracks concrete, it finds the mic again. Her voice, once dismissed as gossip, was now a catalyst. No longer hot topics. Now, hard truths. No longer silenced. Now, remembered. Because sometimes the loudest legacy isn't a #1 hit. It's being the voice that refused to disappear,